This reading from the book of Sirach is particularly insightful. I think it has been a common expression of the condition of humanity, the fallen original sin of humanity, that we express anger and wrath. Sirach says, anger and wrath, these also are abominations, and the sinful man will possess them. We see that throughout history, and again in our own time, the expression of so much emotion in the world today is anger, resentment, swelling around the world. The particularly difficult and most, I suppose, resentful, regretful, and pointed anger, though, is when it cannot be directed at anybody. In these times, the amount of anger that is expressed that one feels ourselves from being inhibited from doing things because of this virus, because of the situation, the circumstances in the world. There is an anger that comes out that we feel, either small because we can't do some day-to-day things, or large things about the illness and death of friends and family, or just about going about our daily lives. It's inhibited, there's an anger, and this is worse when it cannot be directed at anybody in particular. It's an issue, I think, of justice and injustice. We are very sensitive to injustice, particularly against ourselves, and that's not a bad thing, but we can see it in the wrong way. And there's no resolution to the injustice of in circumstances which are beyond our control. In the wider sense, this anger can be expressed even at God. This is often a direction, in the absence of anything else, that we can turn our wrath. And in particularly where this is perhaps most visible is among the atheists professing not to believe in God, that there is no such thing as God, and yet also seem to be very angry at him. When there's no resolution to the problem of injustice, because the circumstances are not about somebody or some action taken against us, it can be directed back at ourselves. We're the ones taking action in the circumstances. Have we done right? The idea of regret at what we have done, guilt even, that some things that we have done, the actions that we have taken, of which we are of control, has in some way made the circumstances worse. I've said before, a couple of weeks ago, this same dynamic we see in the woman of Zarephath that Elijah goes to. She is presented with this miraculous presence of Elijah, which means that she doesn't starve. Her and her son do not starve. And yet when her son falls sick and dies, she turns on Elijah, asking, "Have you come to me to bring my sin to remembrance?" This circumstance, she cannot escape the thought that in some way something she has done, her sin, is part of what is going on. And thus we project it away from ourselves. Anger, guilt, and regret and resentment, particularly when you can't direct it at any action, at any person who has acted against us. So it's projected away from ourselves. And so in the absence of someone to blame, and in the absence of wanting this desire not to focus on ourselves, to escape the guilt, to deflect that feeling that we might have done something ourselves, this anger and resentment is also moving around with self-justification. And that sets us against others, doesn't it? The idea that we haven't done anything, and therefore I need somebody to blame, I need somewhere to direct my anger It must be others. So the hardest task in our world, in our fallen condition, is to face the anger and resentment with humility, to really look at our own lives, to concentrate on what can I control about my actions in a circumstance beyond control. This is the hardest task. Not focusing on others' wrong, which may be there, of course. We're all fallen and sinful. But not focusing on this others' wrong, but our own contribution to injustice. Something that the prophets of the Old Testament always speak about. It's not about very obvious sins. Of course, people should abhor those things. But what the prophets are doing are bringing to light the hidden injustice, the way we self-justify, the way we project onto others what is going on. So maybe in this dynamic we can look at the gospel and what is going on. The servant, the wicked servant as he ends up being called, is so intent on restoring the little injustice outstanding to him that he fails to see the immense forgiveness shown by the king. Because after 2,000 years of reflecting on this in the church, it's fairly obvious what's going on. But the point is, it's not obvious to the servant who just wants to get his due. If we can't be humbled by the infinite love God shows us, then we have no escape from anger. So Paul in the letter to the Romans quotes, I think it's probably from Deuteronomy, he says, "As it is written, 'Vengeance is mine,' says the Lord." But what we need to get over is that the vengeance God takes is forgiveness.